Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some games that I think could get a little bit sketchy for those undefeated teams, Miami and Indiana, facing off against Georgia Tech and Michigan respectively. Going to be a little bit of a battle, but we'll see what happens there. Definitely some that we will break down as we get into the next week, but let's get into the top 10 as we head into week 11. What do we need to see from these top 10 teams as they head into the home stretch of their seasons? Definitely some things that are a little bit awry with these teams right now, some things that you just want to continue seeing from a couple of these teams. And we'll start with that number one team in the country, the Oregon Ducks, right about now, and they're facing off against Maryland this upcoming weekend. They're 25 point favorites. Feel pretty good as they head into this one. And I think the biggest thing here is we talked about it yesterday when we talked about this one in the upset alert. It's just about Oregon keeping their focus. They've been incredibly good. If you saw that video that they put out on their Twitter yesterday, incredible how good this team is at keeping their motivation, keeping their focus in these games, and giving them a motivation one way or the other to finish off these games. Now, it gets a little bit tougher every single week that you have that number one next to your name. It gets a little bit tougher to keep your focus. It gets a little bit tougher to make sure that you handle all of the business that you need to. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what Oregon does the rest of the way. And more than anything, the last little bit has been about them playing clean football. It's not been about them doing anything overly special or putting up 50 points per game or doing anything crazy. It's just been about taking care of the ball, moving the ball, staying in front of the sticks, and then hitting those couple of special plays that they're more than capable of. So make this no different, really. I think that's the only thing. And then on the defensive side of the ball, a little bit more specific, would love to see them force some turnovers. I think this Maryland team is going to throw the ball. They're going to push the ball downfield. The question is, can you get a couple of turnovers? That's the one category, really, that they haven't necessarily been elite in this year. It could be the thing that kind of takes them over the top and makes them not only really hard to beat, but maybe downright impossible to beat. And then we got Ohio State. They're facing off against Purdue this upcoming weekend, coming off that huge win against Penn State. And it's one of those where it's kind of a sleepy noon game against a team that you really shouldn't have to worry about. The goal is to make this no bigger than it should be. The goal is to make that line look totally normal, to make it look totally right at the end of the day, and not let this be kind of a Nebraska game where you come in feeling really good about yourself and you walk out just wondering what happened and feeling like you didn't play nearly your best football. And the other thing is something we talked about when we broke down that Penn State game. Give me the physicality level that you brought in the last 5 minutes of that game. Give me that for the entirety of this game. I would love to see a game where Will Howard has 90 yards passing, but they have 400 yards on the ground, and they're able to just tear them to pieces, run the ball every single down, and just kind of handle business the rest of the way. So it's one of those games where you really should be able to kind of play around with some things. You really should be able to work on some things, and I think if you can get that run game really rolling, you can get that offensive line. The other minor part is just that offensive line cohesiveness, making sure they're all playing together, make sure they're a unit of five, not just five individual guys out there, getting over 200 yards rushing, getting over 300 yards rushing, really imposing your will, I think is probably the thing that they want to do in this game. And then just get out with no injuries. That's obviously the big time thing when you have a game that has a line like this one. It's about getting out with no injuries and finding your way to the next week feeling good about where you are. And then we got this Georgia game against Ole Miss this upcoming weekend, and it's all about that guy in the picture. There's no doubt about that. It is about just no turnovers, playing clean football, making sure you take care of the ball, taking what the defense gives you, not doing anything too aggressive, and I think it's all there. I think this Georgia offense isn't necessarily too far away. I don't think they're missing, massive holes. I don't think they're necessarily missing personnel, although people would tell you, this pass catching group is not elite by any means, and they're probably right. It's plenty good enough. They have the talent to definitely be a very potent offense, and I think it's just one of those things where Carson Beck needs to take a step back, say, let's just make the plays in front of us. Let's just make that 5-yard check down. Let's hit the tight end on the flat, whatever that is. Just make things a little bit easier for your team and keep the ball moving, because this Ole Miss team is very dangerous. If you can keep that defense on the field, you're going to find openings, and you're going to be able to get this offense possibly lacking just a little bit throughout the day. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's about doing what you did against Texas. Pin your ears back and go into attack mode. This offensive line for Ole Miss is very solid, not necessarily elite by any means, and it definitely one where if you can get after them, if you can make sure that Jackson Dart is not comfortable in this game, especially with essentially no run game to speak of for Ole Miss, you're going to be very, very successful. You have an athletic quarterback to deal with that is a little bit more athletic than that guy over in Austin, but at the end of the day, it's definitely one where you should be able to take advantage, and if you can, then maybe you walk out of there with a 8 sack, 10 tackle for loss type performance from this defense. Moving on to Texas, it's all about that quarterback again, really, more than anything else, and it's really about that offensive line in a lot of different ways, but with that, obviously, comes a lot of success for the quarterback. So the offensive line needs to go to work. They need to be a lot more dominant in the run game than they have been this year. They need to be a lot better in the pass game than they have been really the last 2 weeks against Georgia and Vanderbilt. So it's going to be a battle back and forth, and it's going to be a team that you're going to have to really hit a couple of big plays in this game more than anything else. I think Florida's a team, especially without DJ Lagway, if you're not able to fully handle your business, if you're not able to win this game by 14, 17 points, we're probably looking at being a little bit nervous about where Texas is going forward. Now, I do think it's one of those games where, regardless of who the quarterback is, it's not going to be the ideal situation. It's either not going to be 100% DJ Lagway or it's going to be Aiden Warner, and you should be able to go hunting if you're Texas. You should be able to really get after the quarterback and make a couple of big-time plays. It'll be interesting to see the approach, and it'll be interesting to see how they all defend this. But more than anything else, hit a couple of big plays with Quinn Ewers, get that pass game a little bit more explosive than it has been the last couple of weeks, and that comes down to the offensive line more than anything else. Penn State has a really, really interesting game this upcoming week. We talked about it on the upset meter where I think Washington's just a dangerous team. I think there's someone that could come in there and just outright ruin the season for Penn State this upcoming weekend. But more than anything, this is about picking yourself up. This is about making sure that you have the mental acuity, you have the mental toughness to get back up, be able to handle it business the rest of the way, and find your way into the playoff. That's the ultimate goal here. And then you got to win a game, but you'll get to that, obviously. You have to be able to handle business this week and then the rest of the way. And this is probably going to be the toughest game that they face the rest of the way, if I had to imagine. But the other part of this is it's a whiteout. Use the energy, use all of it, take a couple of shots downfield, be aggressive, do all of the stuff that has been missing and really was missing last week more than anything else. You're going to have to be able to push the ball downfield if you want to beat the elite teams in this country. Utilize this game. Utilize the energy that you're going to have and the aggression that your defense is going to be playing with, and take a couple of shots offensively. Take a couple of shots, and then you're going to get this run game going. That's the ultimate goal here, where you have the run game going, and then you can take those shots downfield. I think it's one of those games where it could be a little bit of a dogfight. If Penn State's able to make it even over that number of 13 that they're favored by right now, you got to feel really good about Penn State going forward, but it's really about just flushing out that Ohio State loss and doing kind of just all the things that they didn't do in that game more than anything else. Mississippi State-Tennessee is going to be a fascinating game, and it's a Tennessee team that I've talked about a lot, and I think they're very, very close to being the team that they were early in the season and what they can be the rest of the way, but they're 1% away. They keep missing those deep balls downfield. They keep overthrowing them, underthrowing them, maybe dropping them for the receiver side. There's a lot of different things that are just missing by this much, missing by mere inches. But at the end of the day, if Tennessee can push the ball downfield in a game where you have the opening, you're not necessarily going to be in a ton of danger throughout this game, especially with how good your defense is. Take the shots downfield. You can afford a couple of mistakes in this one, and Nico just has to hit a couple of deep balls down the stretch of the season, especially next week. Use this one as kind of a primer, I suppose, for that Georgia game. Use it as a way to kind of get everything in place, and then you can move forward, and then you can feel like you're confident in this offense as you head down the stretch of the season. But it's going to be really hard to if you can't hit those deep balls. Use this one as kind of a buffer, I suppose, as you get into that Georgia game and utilize some of the things that you just haven't been able to early on in the season. And then I think the other part is just kind of take care of business, make this one not look weird, make this one not look ugly, make sure that people know that you're not looking ahead to that Georgia game like you were in that Arkansas game earlier in the season. Just be able to handle business, not overthink it, not overdo anything, and obviously take the shots where you have them, but not necessarily overdo anything in this game. Then we got the Holy War. It's going to be an incredible game between BYU and Utah, and BYU only being a 4-point favorite here, just a little bit sketchy. Definitely one that brings your eye to it a little bit more. And I think the biggest thing for me is for BYU is win the turnover margin. It's going to be a very, very good defense on the other side, one that has been incredibly good even after Cam Rising went out, and it's going to be a battle back and forth, and I think it's one of those games where if BYU is able to just do the things they've been doing all year, if they're able to win the turnover battle, if they're able to win situational football, they'll be more than fine. That being said, probably going to be the toughest team they've faced thus far in doing that. It's probably going to be the toughest team to get a couple of turnovers from, and it's probably going to be the toughest team to not, have a couple of turnovers against. So it's going to be a battle back and forth. And then for the BYU defense, I think it's just being about attacking. This Utah offense has not been good really since Cam Rising left, and regardless of who's at quarterback for them, just go to work in this one and not necessarily overthink it by any means. And then we got Notre Dame, Florida State, a game that is going to be a little bit disappointing. It probably should be the marquee game of the week, or at least one of them, and it's being a little bit left behind, which absolutely stinks, but that team down there in Tallahassee has not necessarily been playing great football. So for Notre Dame, it's about, making it look like they haven't been playing great football, making it look as, a lot of these Florida State games have looked this year, and really just taking care of business. But more specifically, find that pass game just a little bit more. Continue to, get after that. Continue to push the ball downfield a little bit more aggressively. And really, I'd love for them to find a wide receiver one. Find the guy that you can go to time and again, feel confident in, because down the stretch of the season, you're going to play some games that you're going to be required to find that one guy that you can go to time and again, and it's going to be important to find it in games like this. So definitely something to watch. And then for the defense, if you give up, I don't know what the number is, but let's say 20 points. Let's say 14 points, really, against this Florida State offense. You got some problems. So definitely be a little bit suffocating, really go to work, and just take advantage of this moment. It was a game that you thought it was going to be a battle back and forth. You've been given a little bit of a layup. Take the layup and then keep moving to the next week. So it's going to be an incredible week just in the top 10, because you feel like you have a couple of upsets somewhere in there. But we'll obviously break it down throughout the rest of the week, and we'll see what happens as we go into this weekend. But let's take our third break here, and when we come back, we got to get into the little bit of a whip around. All of the different games that we haven't had a chance to get to thus far, we'll break them down right after this.